What does protagonist actually mean? The word gets thrown around a lot, but in this video, I'm going to take an in-depth look at both the dictionary and academic meanings of the word, mostly using Obi-Wan and Anakin from Star Wars as case studies. The results might surprise you as much as they did me. Which of them is the main protagonist? Let's analyze and find out. Welcome to Writing 101, me, Ethan Avery. Okay, first things first, what does the word protagonist actually mean? According to Merriam-Webster, the definition of protagonist is the leading actor or principal character in a television show, movie, book, etc. And according to dictionary.com, a protagonist is the leading character, hero or heroine of a drama or other literary work. But those aren't the definitions my writing, drama, and theater professors in college used. Instead, they tended to define a protagonist as the character whose actions move the main plot forward. Now, I think there's an important distinction to be made. Being the character that gets the most screen time in a movie or pages in a book doesn't necessarily mean you're the protagonist by this academic definition. I think this is probably why we get arguments about things like who the real protagonist of Lord of the Rings is. A lot of people say Frodo, but there are arguments for Aragorn, Gandalf, and even Sam. Heck, there's probably an argument that can be made for Gollum. But this video's case study will be on Obi-Wan Kenobi, and to analyze, let's take a quick look at episode 2, which I'm aware isn't everyone's favorite film in the series, but I think there's some invaluable information that can be learned from it in regards to character. Also, it's probably obvious by now, but heads up, major spoilers! So if you've yet to see this almost 20-year-old film and want to, now's the time to pause the video. Okay, first, let's start off with a dictionary definition. I've done the painstaking work of counting each and every scene in the film. Anakin, unsurprisingly, is in more scenes than anyone else. He leads the way with 25, which puts him in half of the movie's 50 scenes, but Obi-Wan isn't far behind at 23. Now, here's how we break down scenes in drama school. Each scene is made up of what we call units, which are made up of beats. Beats are basically a group of related lines. They introduce, develop, and conclude a single small topic. Units are a group of related beats. In short, beats make up units, which make up scenes, which make up acts, which make up stories. Take this scene, for example. Here's a beat of Padme telling Jar Jar his new surrogate role.
Take my place in the Senate. Representative Binks, I know I can count on you.
Then there's a beat of Padme complaining about being forced to leave the Capitol.
I do not like this idea of hiding.
And these two beats form what we call a unit, this unit being about politics and such. Then the scene continues, and there's a beat where Anakin praises Obi-Wan.
As wise as Master Yoda and as powerful as Master Windu.
And then there's a beat where Anakin complains about Obi-Wan.
He's overly critical. He never listens.
And then there's this weird romance beat. And altogether, these beats kind of form a unit about growing up. Altogether, these make up the scene. In the interest of time, we aren't going to go over each scene individually, but here's a list of every scene in the movie if you want to pause and look for yourself. The film is pretty consistent, actually. There's usually an Anakin scene, then an Obi-Wan scene. In fact, it does this for 17 straight scenes at one point. Also, according to this IMDb post, Anakin is on screen for a whopping 48 minutes in the film compared to Obi-Wan's 34. And for any of you wondering about Jar Jar Binks, he was reduced to about 2 minutes of screen time compared to nearly 20 in episode 1. A quick look at the promotional material for the film will show you that Hayden Christensen's face is also plastered bigger than anyone else's. So with more scenes, screen time, and marketing, Anakin clearly takes the lead in the dictionary definition of the word. But let's now take a look at the academic definition of the word protagonist. To answer this, we need to find out what the main plot of the film actually is. Well, it follows basic 3-act structure like most Hollywood films, which, if you're curious to learn more about, there's a card up there, and there's a link in the description if you want to see my last video breaking down 3-act structure. Alright, let's talk about the inciting incident or action, which usually marks the end of the first act, where our protagonist officially accepts their journey, as the inciting action goes hand in hand with what we call the protagonist's super objective.
Track down this bounty hunter, you must, Obi-Wan.
Most importantly, find out who he's working for.
In our film example here, Obi-Wan is tasked by the Jedi Council to track down the bounty hunter and find out who he's working for. And the inciting incident is the attempted assassination of Senator Padme. This to me is the main teller. If you're the person being asked to do the important thing at the end of Act 1, it probably means you're the main protagonist. Anyway, the reason I point this out is that Anakin has two main points of conflict in this film. Romance and his opinions on how larger institutions, namely the Republic, should function. And while both of these become significant pieces to the overall plot of Star Wars the series, they don't really affect the main plot, tracking down the bounty hunter and finding out who he's working for, in any meaningful way. Because even if he was completely happy with all the laws and rules, and if there was no romance between him and Padme, everything that happens in the main plot would still happen. Anakin might be on screen for nearly 50 minutes, but if you think about what he's actually doing, hating sand, going on dates, literally rolling around in grass, they're exposition and setup for future movies. And while it might move the romantic subplot forward, it's not moving the main plot of finding out who the bounty hunter is working for forward. All of that is left to Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan is the one who researches the poison dart, which leads to him finding Kamino missing, which leads to him visiting Kamino, which leads to finding out about the clone army and meeting, fighting, and ultimately following Jango Fett to Geonosis, where he scouts around for more information before ultimately being captured. All of these things are related to the super objective of tracking down the bounty hunter and finding out who he's working for. And this makes Obi-Wan the protagonist. By the academic definition, at least. In fact, I'd argue that Anakin is Obi-Wan's foil, a term defined as a character who contrasts heavily with another character, and often but not always it's the protagonist that this character contrasts with. The basic idea is that the two characters have some similarities, like maybe they're from the same place or have the same job, and perhaps they have similar skills or abilities. But they often have polar opposite ways of achieving their goals, even if those goals are the same, and will often butt heads over this. Here are 10 popular examples of foils and their counterparts. Iron Man and Captain America from Marvel, Superman and Batman from DC, Marcus and Mike from Bat Boys, Goku and Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z, Naruto and Sasuke from Naruto, Ellie and Abby from The Last of Us 2, Professor X and Magneto from X-Men, Yuri and Flynn from Tales of Vesperia, Aragorn and Boromir from The Lord of the Rings, T'Challa and Killmonger from Black Panther. Foils are literary devices used by writers to give an example of what our protagonist could be if only a few things were different. And often, but not always, these characters meet a tragic end. So armed with that knowledge, I want to look at Obi-Wan's super objective, not just for one film, but for the entire trilogy. See, he and Anakin aren't normal foils, because their relationship starts out as a mentor and student. Obi-Wan promises his dying master Qui-Gon Jinn that he'll train Anakin. And so what one could argue the story of Star Wars is really about is the protagonist, aka Obi-Wan, failing his objective of mentoring Anakin correctly, which is on full display in
We will not
Episode 2.
exceed our mandate, my young Padawan learner.
Besides, your senses aren't that attuned to my young apprentice.
Well, you've lost him. That was some shortcut, Anakin. This weapon is your life.
I try, Master.
Don't do anything without first consulting either myself or the Council.
Yes, Master.
I was beginning to wonder if you'd got my message.
I retransmitted it just as you had requested, Master. Then we decided to come and rescue you.
Good job. I can't take Dooku alone! I need you! If we catch him, we can end this war right now! We have a job to do!
But now it becomes difficult to answer the question, is Obi-Wan failing because his methods aren't right for Anakin, or is Anakin's reckless teenage behavior the problem? It's the classic case of, probably both, but it's hard to guess which is the bigger issue. But if Obi-Wan is the protagonist for the prequels, then who's the protagonist for the entire series? You tell me.